Yes, he did in brotherhood. From sea to shining sea. One more time. America, God love you, America. You know, my God done shed his grace on all of thee, and he crowned thy good, just like he said he would in brotherhood. From sea to shining sea.
Welcome to In Focus. I'm your host, Kathy Staples, and today we have a very important information that we're bringing you. As you remember, In Focus is programming that will benefit you, the Santa Maria area. Today, my guest is Chief Dan Orr of the Santa Maria Fire Department, and we're going to be speaking about the Town Center Hotel fire that happened October the 13th this year, and the result of 7 people being sent to the hospital. And was that fire truly an arson, or was it an accident? So let me welcome Chief Orr, and he's going to give us all the details. Welcome, Chief Orr.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
This fire that happened on October the 13th, can you set the stage for me a little bit about what time that was?
Fire actually came in at 2:26 in the morning on a Friday morning, or Saturday morning actually. And it was a pretty normal night in Santa Maria. We had 2 dumpster fires prior to this fire, and that actually plays into the whole plot of what's going on here. So we'll talk about that more from the suspicion of the fire and how this turns into arson.
Very fine. Thank you, Chief. Let's go ahead. We have some video. Could you show that to us so the folks can understand the importance and urgency of this experience here in our hometown? Chief, can you tell me what we're seeing here?
So this video is kind of during our overhaul stages. The fire is basically out, and this is during the overhaul stages. You can see ladders on the left side that are starting to come down. There's still a little bit of fire on the 3rd floor, but the majority of the rescues are done, and now we're kind of in mop-up stage. Very interesting because it was a fire that we see a lot back east. You see people, when we showed up on scene, people were hanging out of the windows, and there were actually smoke coming out over the top of them. And it's something that you would see back east in old apartment buildings, but you don't see it here on the West Coast very often. And so as firefighters, we were all kind of taken back. Wow, you never see this very often. And all of those folks were on the 3rd floor. There were 4 very good rescues made off of the 3rd floor using ground ladders. And it's a skill that we practice. We practice it consistently and constantly, and those skills paid off this night.
So you can actually have ladders that go to the 3rd floor, is that correct?
Yes, the ladder truck, we have a truck that has a 110-foot ladder on it that'll actually go to the top of the high-rise, which is 8 stories. It'll go to the roof. But it also carries what we call ground ladders, which are aluminum ladders. And there's a 40-foot ladder, there's 235s. Those 235s were the ones that were used the night of this fire, and other assorted ladders. Ladders are a huge piece of our business because pulling people out of windows, although not done a great deal, is a skill that we need to know. And again, that skill came to use this night.
Talk to me a little bit about the skill that you need to know. You kind of mentioned to me that there was a fire back east that was very similar to what you experienced. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about that?
Sure. So the fire happened in Reno, and it happened many years ago, and it was called the Nirvana fire. And Nirvana was an old hotel in Reno that was very, very similar to the town center, built back in the 20s, 3 stories, all of those things. It also was an arson fire. In that fire, 27 people perished, actually died in that fire. And from a fire department perspective, we've always worried for town center because you learn from history. And so we knew that that was something that had a strong possibility. This was probably the proudest moment from my perspective as the fire chief for the folks who work for us, because the job they did was truly incredible.
Well, we have some pictures I'd like to share with you folks referencing that fire that night. Can we have that first picture, please? What are we seeing here, Chief?
So this is actually the beginning of the firefight. The arsonist set the fire kind of in that corner right there where the plate glass window is, and you can see the fire on the left-hand side. That's where the fire was set. This is an old hotel that's very open in construction, and fire traveled through it very, very quickly. And the thing that we were very concerned about was how fast fire was going to move from the first floor all the way to the third. The reason so many lives were saved is truly attributed to the police department.
Is that right? Tell me, what happened with the police?
So the police department, because the second that call was received, there was an officer there within 30 seconds. And that officer and adjoining officers went in and started doing evacuation, and they did the first and second floor.
So Santa Maria PD actually went into the building and got people, warned them,
got
fire.
people out. And there's stories, and I've heard many of them over the last month or so, of the smoke is so thick and officers yelling, and people were basically just going towards the sound of the officer yelling, coming, walk towards me, those kinds of things. The population in this hotel, there was a young lady who resided there who was an amputee. She was actually carried out by an officer who lived there on the first floor. Officers stayed until the sergeant ordered them out. And we've learned so much from this fire, and for both the police and the fire department. But it was truly a team effort, and that's truly the bottom line of this. It takes a whole bunch of people to make these things very successful. This was not a fire department success. This was truly a public safety success.
What a team effort. Public safety, our fire department and our police department working together to save lives. And of course, that is your mission. Let's look at the second photo that we have. I wanted you to kind of review again that a bit for me. What are we seeing there, Chief?
So this is a fire on the third floor, and basically what happened is there's an internal staircase to this structure, and the fire traveled up that staircase very, very quickly. And I know that there will be pictures later that will show you the inside of this structure and the damage that it did.
Okay.
The other thing is this is, again, 1920s construction. So think about how many times it's been added on to or changed or modified. And there are chases, void spaces in the construction. And once the fire got into those void spaces, it ran basically from the floor to the third floor.
So it's like a flu. I mean, it just literally took
exactly what it is.
Really, wow.
And those void spaces are throughout the entire structure. And so one of the things that we've always thought was going to happen, and it actually proved true that night.
So this has been kind of knowledgeable about this may happen with this particular structure for some period of time. There was concern because it was older, and there was hot plates. Give us a little description of what you observed there that was happening with the residents inside.
This hotel probably back in the day in the 20s was probably quite the cat's meow, for lack of better terms. And over the course of time, it has degraded just because it's an old hotel. The hotel part of it kind of went away, and it turned into residential homes for folks that were probably low income, just on tough times. Okay. And a hard population, a really hard population, because they don't have insurance. What they have in their room, and those possessions in their room are probably the most valuable thing. It is the most valuable thing in the world to them. We ended up sheltering 57 people from the hotel. We sheltered them all the way through from October 12th all the way through till November 1st. We didn't shelter them. Red Cross sheltered them. A NAMI center was used to do that. But that was this whole thing, from the fire itself all the way through to making sure the last person had someplace to stay, and the shelter closing down, and the warming shelter closing down, and all the things that went on before there, has been a huge learning curve for the department and the city as a whole.
Well, that learning curve, so very important. And frankly, when I saw you present to the City Council, Chief Orr, the remarks you made were so heartfelt that it brought me to tears, because I saw how invested you were in the people and in what happened there and the care for them. And we're going to go into a little bit later what further help that they received. There were 7 sent to the hospital, is that correct?
7 people were transported to the hospital, 5 to Marion, 2 to Lompoc. They were all for minor smoke inhalation, and within 2 hours, everybody was released.
Serious business. What's the next photo then? Can we take a look at that so Chief can tell us what was happening?
Again, just another picture of the 3rd floor. This is the flue effect and fire in that 3rd floor in a room. And in that corner, there was things that the way the hotel was constructed, that corner was a perfect flue, and the fire got there very, very quickly.
If you hold that picture a minute, I want to describe what we saw in the video earlier, Chief, in that there was a fireman on a ladder going up to the 3rd floor, and at which time there was a man trying to escape those flames that we're looking at now. And what happened on that? He was really quite a hero, it looks like to me.
So it's interesting because the gentleman came down the ladder, and he obviously was moved to get out of the room as quickly as possible, because if you look at the video, you'll see he comes down head first.
Literally coming down head first to get away from the smoke and flame.
Not the way you want to come down a ladder in any way, shape, or form, especially when you're 30 feet off the ground. And so the other thing that you really can't see from the video is right behind him is PG&E high-power tension lines power lines that run down that alley. This gentleman, the firefighter who took him down was Kyle Dodds, and Engineer Dodds describes, because he kept having to tell the gentleman, stop holding on, quit grabbing the ladder. Talk about a normal human reaction, especially head first down the 30-foot ladder.
So the firefighter is looking at the power lines.
Yep.
He's got a man trying to come down the ladder face first,
yep,
because he's so afraid, scared to death.
Yep.
And he's keeping it all together. And he's making a very heroic move and making sure everybody was safe. There was no fatalities, if I recall correctly. Is that correct,
No fatalities in this fire. And that's truly the miracle of this call. This call, we had every anticipation that we believed that we would probably have a fatality, if not many fatalities.
As versus the Reno fire, where
Correct.
there were 27 lost.
Correct.
In that particular flame.
Again, one of my proudest moments.
Outstanding. You did a wonderful job. Let's take another look at that film, if we could, please.
So this is a picture. This is very early on. The thing that's noticeable for this photo is the marquee that's basically on fire. Marquees, historically, from a fire department perspective, are firefighter killers, and they fall with very little warning. And it was something that we were very worried about. There's 2 entrances. This used to be 1 building, and back in the 70s it was converted to 2 buildings because the partners got into a tiff, and that's how they divided the asset, was to create 2 separate hotels.
I see.
The gentleman who owns it currently eventually acquired both pieces and kind of put it back together to a certain extent.
I see.
But you can see kind of the lobby there, the door going in.
Right.
And that's very, very early in the fire. But it gives you an idea of how fast fire moved through the lobby and
it's inflamed.
And through the entire hotel.
Thank you. Can we see the next one? Oh gosh, that's just gruesome, Chief. What are we looking at?
So
there?
this is a picture of kind of the first floor. You see kind of big holes in the plaster.
I do.
Those are created by our fire streams. The water that we use to fight the fire is under about 100 psi of pressure, and it's a rather large amount of water from a GPM perspective, gallons per minute. And so it tends to do that and put holes in it. But you can see by looking at those, the black is basically the smoke stain of what you're looking at.
I see. The next picture for us, please.
This is the standing in the lobby where you saw that glass front.
Oh, this is the lobby where
and
it
you're
was being
now
blowing
looking
out?
down the lobby, kind of down that front side. This is just this is after it's been boarded up, so those boards are just part of trying to secure the property.
I see. So the walls were absolutely burned away.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Next one, please. Oh, my. Is that part of the area where it's rebuilt over?
Yeah,
That
it looks
roof area?
it looks like it. You can tell where the roof, some of the roof structure has come down, and it's exposing the structural members that actually hold it up.
Yes.
Again, this is a very old hotel that's been modified many different ways.
I see. Next one, please.
This is looking down the first floor corridor. Think of this hotel as a long rectangle, and so
Yes.
the length of it is, this is the hallway that runs down the first floor, and you can actually see the smoke stain. When I say smoke stain, you can see where it goes from dark and then back into paint, and as you get lower, the condition gets better, except for the carpet where there's debris on the carpet. But look at the walls and the difference in the walls as you go up.
And so that's one of the things that you teach as a safety important tip, is to get low when there's a fire in a building.
Sure.
Is that...
In a normal residential structure fire, if you're standing up, those temperatures can be upwards of 1,200 degrees. Now, if you get on the floor, that 1,200 degrees gets down to closer to 300 or 400 degrees. Wow. And you'll actually see firefighters, we crawl on our bellies to get to the fire because, one, 1,200 degrees is not our personal protective equipment can't handle that kind of heat.
1,200 degrees.
And so we crawl to get to the fire to try and put it out. And most people don't realize that. Everybody sees it from a movie perspective and sees people walking in. And that's not the way that works.
Not so.
No.
1,200 degrees, folks. Can we see the next one, please?
This is the staircase that leads up to the second floor. This is the landing on the first floor as you head up to the second floor. Look at the alligatoring on the side of that staircase and char.
Yes.
You can tell that it was a very hot fire that burned very, very quickly.
Chief, tell me, do we believe now at this point that this was an arson set fire?
So we had intentions to believe that very early on, and one of the things that we did was we called the detectives in, Santa Maria Police Department detectives. Mike Sawyer was the detective who was on call. But he started to develop leads, and there was a suspect that came to be pretty well known who had been fired from the hotel a couple of months earlier and who had been making threats against the owner that he was going to burn the hotel. All news to us. Oh. So that lead was followed, and eventually that gentleman was arrested and is now sitting in county jail awaiting arraignment.
Well done, police department and fire department. We're happy with that. What was the biggest problem that you think you faced on that fire that night?
So,
and then after.
Yeah, our biggest issue was truly the rescue piece of it. Was trying to get people out of the structure and away from danger. It's a center corridor hallway type construction, so it's a hallway that runs down the center, and then all the rooms lead to the center of the hotel. The third floor was the absolute worst because obviously the fire used the staircase, and all the smoke and superheated gas went up the staircase to the third floor and then ran down the hall.
Oh, how frightening. So the stairwell was used as a funnel to take the fire to the top floor.
Think of fire and smoke is going to travel the path of least resistance. Think of it as pouring water, only in reverse. So water is going to puddle to the lowest point, and then it's going to raise. Smoke does the exact opposite. It's going to raise to the highest point, and then it's going to start to bank down. And the third floor was that place.
Wow. So no wonder that gentleman was trying to get out of the window
Exactly.
any way he could.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the next picture, please.
This is the second story landing, and starting to look down the hall. You can see the staircase continues up to the third floor, and you can just see the amount of destruction and damage that was done. One of the things I want you to see is if you look through that little tiny sliver, that's the doorway to somebody's apartment. Now, what do you see? You see a room that has no smoke damage, that's perfectly white. All of their contents are in good shape. That door was closed during the fire. Now, this brings up an interesting point. If you close the doors to your home, you now are making little boxes inside your house. And if you have a fire in your house, the most likely places for a fire are two places, the kitchen or the garage, okay? So let's say you have a fire in your kitchen and that fire travels. If those doors are closed, those rooms that aren't exposed to that smoke and superheated gas are going to be much better off and much more intact. And this is an interesting piece for me because one of the messages that I'm trying to get out is for people who have children to close the doors to their rooms. Now that's very counterintuitive for most mothers because most mothers, if you have a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, most mothers have an ear for
listening for the child.
For the child during the night, okay?
Right.
And what I'm asking them to do is
Close the door.
But that closing of the door buys us all kinds of time and makes that rescue very, very viable. And that's very, very important from our perspective.
To save a child or person's life.
Yep.
Well, that's another tip the Chief's given us today. Can we see a second photo, please?
This is the third floor hallway. And what you'll notice is you'll see this, as you look down the hallway and look at the ceiling, the first kind of opening there is a skylight.
Yes.
And then after that, you're going to see a bunch of holes cut in the ceiling, and then it comes into another skylight. We did an operation called trenching, and trenching is where we put a firefighter on the third floor, and we have him cut holes down that hallway to let all that smoke and superheated gas out. Now that buys me a couple of things. One, it buys the firefighters visibility so that as they go up to the third floor, they're not dealing with the smoke and superheated gas and they can actually see and make rescues. And two, it makes it a much more tenable environment for the victims who may be trapped in the hallway. And that's where Reno had problems. They were all trapped in the hallway and they all died in the hallway because of the smoke asphyxiation. That's
unbelievable. The last photo, please.
This last photo is a picture of the marquee. This is after the fire, obviously. We had to shore that marquee up. All of our firefighters are USAR trained, which is Urban Search and Rescue, so they're trained in, if we had a substantial earthquake, they know how to shore things and how to build boxes to ensure that things don't fall on them. We were very concerned about this marquee because of the investigation and wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to come down.
So, Chief, you have taken us completely through this disaster that you so ably handled. Thanks to your men on site, thanks to Santa Maria PD, we just can't appreciate you enough for all that you do. And thank you again for coming on to community television and In Focus to give information to you, the public, to know how to keep you safe, to know what the right procedures are. And now you have the full story of what has happened at the Town Center Hotel fire. And as the Chief would say, if you got a closing word to, maybe a word to the wise for the folks out there.
The closing word would simply be make sure you have a working smoke detector, because that was truly what helped on the second and third floor of this fire. Working smoke detectors.
Working smoke detector, folks. Come back again, won't you, Chief?
I will. Thank you
very much.
We'd love
to share more information with you.
Thank you so much.
And thanks again for joining us for In Focus today.